Okay, I just started recording.
Okay, this is the Transportation and Parking Commission meeting for Wednesday, July 15, 2026, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 4 minutes after 4 p.m. Supposed as a 4 o'clock meeting. And the first thing to do is to make sure that all of the members of the commission can hear me and be heard so that they can confirm it. And then we'll go on to a quick agenda review and public comment as our next things. Following that, we're going to get a report from the Planning and Process Subcommittee. And and if they have any recommendations on next steps on the commission planning process. And then beyond that, we have essentially three issues that we reserve time for. One is to return to the Mount Holyoke Drive crosswalk and the additional information that has been provided by Superintendent Mooring and is in the packet. Um, we want to talk about a parking issue problem near Kendrick Park, and if we have time, to a little bit of discussion about traffic calming in general. Um, One thing I'm going to note is that after the last meeting, which was our first Zoom meeting, it became awkward about use of first names or not use of first names. So I decided that for this meeting, I'm not going to use first names at all. So with that said, I'm going to go through and ask people if they can confirm they can hear and be heard. Mr. Bagg,
Here.
we know that Mr. Leifer said he's be late, and I don't see him on the screen. Councilor McLeod,
Present.
Superintendent Mooring.
Here.
I don't see Mr. Rudewald yet. Um, Chief Ting
Here.
and Ms. Tremblay.
Here.
Okay, if anybody would like to have me recognize them in another manner besides what I've said, let me know now or in the future by email. But I'm going to stick with the plan.
Andy, I'm not going to take it personally, but Counselor Ryan is also here. It's all right.
Yep, Councilor Ryan, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't take it personally. Uh, I thought you were so engrossed in the game that we weren't going to get your attention anyway. So that said, I guess I'm going to look at we have a couple members of the public present, I believe. Um, and we have three members of the public present. We do allow public comment, and I'm going to allow public comment now as posted on the agenda. Public comments can be on any matters that are within the jurisdiction of the commission. Residents are welcome to express their views for up to 3 minutes. I would cut it shorter if there was a lot more people present, but which I'm permitted to do, but I will allow 3 minutes today for anybody who wishes to offer public comment. And the commission will not be engaging in dialogue or comment on the matters raised during public comment. So are there any members of the public who would like to be recognized and to offer public comment? If so, please raise your hand. I think we have one person, Matthew Mattingly. So
You can talk now.
you're in the room, so please proceed.
Hi, I'm commenting in regards to the Mount Holyoke crosswalk, and I really just want to express my appreciation to your commission for dealing with it so quickly and so thoroughly so far. I know you have a lot on your plates, as George said, and I'm sorry, as Councilor Ryan said, and uh, I want to also say that we are, committed to this for the long haul. So as things develop, we will be, with you and trying to pursue this project, even if it takes a long time to get funding and all that kind of thing. That's basically it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Is there anybody else in the public who wishes to offer public comment? Seeing no one else raising their hand, I will recognize the public comment is now concluded, and which means that we can go on. And as we go through, I think that there are documents that were in the packet. I assume that the packet was posted for the public. I will make sure as we
It hasn't
proceed.
been.
But in any event, we will get items on the screen, and there are items that are related to the issues that are going to be raised by the planning subcommittee and process subcommittee. And regarding Mount Holyoke Drive, there were a number of things that were provided. So if they're not, public comment packet didn't get posted yet, I apologize, but if it did, but we will show that on the screen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Tremblay, who's the vice chair of the commission and the chair of the subcommittee, and ask you to give the report and
Great.
so
Thank you.
go ahead.
Thank you. Guilford, can you pull up? I don't know. Do you have the packet, Guilford?
I do. Where is it on the packet?
It's after it's
It's at the very end, pages 15,
Okay.
16.
oh yeah. Thank you.
All right, I will.
Hey Grisha.
Oh, let's before we go further, since Mr. Leifer's present, I just want to ask if you can hear us and to assure that we can hear you. Mr. Leifer?
You're muted. Looks like he froze.
And he's screen sharing.
Oh,
If I am able to
I can share mine. It's right here.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you okay.
Great. The next page, please.
A little bigger.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Hi all, sorry about that. I can hear you.
Okay.
My computer froze and I guess decided to screen share, but I can hear you, and can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Okay, so in the last subcommittee meeting, one of the we started out discussing how the portal, which is now complete and still I think is not live for a reason I need to investigate, and Kathy is unclear why it is not yet live. But one of the first things we discussed, which actually is not on here, includes where the portal should be located on the website. And clearly it should be in, at least we came up with a list of places, a link obviously on the Transportation and Parking Commission, potentially on the DPW site, in the how do I portion of the submit a service request, which is also on the town site, potentially on the police site, and potentially also on the parking site. And we're currently in discussion with IT about how that will look. But those are the subcommittee decided those are the places that the TPC portal should be located. The second point that we discussed in the subcommittee includes whether, so Kathy will intake this information and will do at least a keep a list of the an Excel sheet with requests as they come in. She will also issue a response that includes the request, give it a number, as listed here, was submitted to the Amherst Transportation Parking Commission staff on whatever date for review, and we will be in touch with you. And I think actually we said within the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's a mistake. And I think that's an appropriate time frame. And then the next question really was who reviews the requests for appropriateness? Like, because we're kind of thinking that maybe people won't necessarily know that potholes, for example, don't belong on this request. And after discussion within the committee, and then I also followed up with Kathy, what we thought should happen is that Kathy could kind of do a first pass and update with the committee chair to make sure at least it's an appropriate place for any particular request. And so can we just go down a little bit? And so the follow-up will be that first email from Kathy directly and information on how to, that they may also email her for further updates or something like that. However, we're also keeping accountability within the committee itself, and someone will get in touch with the requester when any definitive kind of decision has been made. So the next item is, and this was, well, I'll get to that in a second, okay. And the other thing that was discussed within the committee itself is how the list is shared, because it turns out that the site, which is I forget exactly, it's some kind of, I forgot exactly what kind of site this is. Is it a .gov site or something? But it cannot necessarily, not all, it really only needs to have one person have access because of any kind of inadvertent comment would be part of the public record. Does that make sense to people? And so for that reason, Kathy will take those requests and put them in an Excel sheet, which can then be shared with the committee. And exactly on which type of forum and whether or not we want to get an update each time a request came in, to me, that seems a little excessive since probably all of our inboxes are a little full. I thought potentially, getting an update once a week might be reasonable. That's certainly something we can work on and change as time goes on. Furthermore, yeah, and so we can't also, the part of the problem is that there might be issues with we can't discuss among ourselves. So it would be a shareable list, but it wouldn't be a commentable list, if that makes sense. So you can't comment on it. So we're not sharing information on that. We're just obtaining information, each of us. And potentially, so I think that's all. Could we go down a little bit, Guilford, please? Yeah, just to the next page is actually kind of good. And so one of the issues on the subcommittee is how the requests are partitioned and potentially shared with relevant stakeholders, such as speeding would be a speeding potential issue might be something that would, we would check with the police department, or for example, someone stating that there's a high crash incident in a particular location. Again, police, or other types of issues that might be more for the Public Works Department. That we would kind of need this information as a committee before we intelligently discussed any particular request. So farming it out to the relevant kind of the people who had the information before we as a committee talked about it. Or should we be the ones as a committee to decide who the request goes to? And this is still we did not come to a consensus on that particular part of the process. And I'd be interested in hearing comments on those items, that item. Does anyone want to comment on whether all items, all requests that are relevant to the commission come to the commission first, and then we request information on them, or we send it to the relevant parties first and then discuss after we get information?
I would suggest sending it to the commission first,
And why is that?
because it's a central location where all items, there may be uncertainty as to the nature of the request. In other words, it sounds like there may be quite a lot of different types of incoming, and it's uncertain the magnitude of them. It may delay. It just from a systemic point, it seems that way to me, that they come to a central location for then determination. That's you asked, so I'm
Yes.
responding
No,
with my
thank you.
thoughts.
No, that is exactly it. Councillor Ryan?
Yeah, I spoke to this at the subcommittee. I felt like Sam that it should start with us. I was uncomfortable with sending things out without any sort of context, or just farming them out to DPW or police or whoever, and they get it and they're like, what are they supposed to do with it? We should be, I think, we go to them and say, okay, we've got this request. We've had a preliminary discussion and we'd like information in this, and this area. So again, I agree with Sam on this.
Risha?
My thought is maybe something about a hybrid approach, is that if there's going to be certain requests that we get where I think it'll slow down our discussion if we don't have some basic amount of information. If there are certain types of requests where we already know, okay, in order to, sort of have an informed discussion about this, either we need crash data, or we need photos of the location, or we need something that's not going to be sort of, easily obtainable over the course of the meeting, by going to Google Street View or something like that. Then I think that's something that maybe by the time that we discuss it, that information should be included. And then, for requests that are sort of outside that just basic list of whatever, whatever list we put together of types of requests and the information that we need, then we discuss them first, discuss what information we need. And that's something that might become clear as we field more and more requests and realize, okay, we really need this type of information. I don't think this is necessarily something we have to decide now, but I think in the future that might help expedite the process, because I don't think we want to be having discussions, to say, okay, we're going to discuss your issue, and then say, well, we actually don't know anything about this. Here's the information we want to put together. And then sort of, I just feel like that stretches the process out.
Yep. Chair, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I am a little bit hesitant to rush to a discussion within the commission one is that we could lose control over our agenda and our time in spending so much time at the beginning, but we really don't know because we don't have experience yet of how frequently we're going to get requests and the complexity of requests. But we need to make sure that we retain the flexibility, that we don't lose control of the process by making an initial review of the process, which would be, for the most part, an uninformed review because we don't have the facts yet take over the time that we have available for the meeting. And as we try and manage and use our time, I think what we really want to make sure is that we identify priority projects and then move them forward and get the information that is needed in order to make some progress on how to address the issues that are brought to us as a request. So I'm a little bit hesitant to establish a specific rule. I think that making the requests available to not just the commission but to the public in an efficient and prompt manner is important, but the discussion of it, I think we need to hold that until we see how this process moves forward and what the demand is.
Yep. To me, that does make sense. And so, okay. Counselor Ryan?
So I just, for clarification's sake, if a request comes in, say somebody wants traffic calming, maybe speed bumps on their street, or somebody, makes a request, there's a speeding problem on West Pomeroy Lane, or somebody says, there's a parking issue at Kendrick Park, and I think we need to look at it. I just want to understand what happens then. Are you imagining a scenario where without us talking about it or anything, it immediately gets sent to DPW or it gets sent to the police? Or are we going to at least have some conversation or some discussion about, just walk me through that. To give me an example and what happens when a resident says, I want a speed bump on my street.
So to me, the first thing is a discussion of speed bumps and the pros and cons of speed bumps, because there are a lot of limitations about speed bumps that, as a layperson, before I had this full discussion, I had no idea about. So I think, so I think toward Mr. Steinberg's suggestion of maybe, first deciding, kind of trying to do this case by case is potentially, to me, a useful exercise, because then all of us will begin to understand how complex some of these requests end up being. And then of course, there's also the prioritization piece of it.
Well, I guess my question is just a very factual one. It doesn't just get sent somewhere else right away. It's something that, in this case, we would have on the agenda at some point talking about that issue or about speed bumps? Or is it just immediately gets sent to Guilford and then Guilford says, well, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah,
think
and
we
that
have to have some role in this from the start.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what we're going to do, but a case by case is fine. But if I hear about a request for a speed bump and it immediately goes to Guilford and he says, well, what am I supposed to do with this?
Why don't we ask Guilford?
Exactly. Guilford, what would you do with it if suddenly this came to you?
So if you asked, if it came in and you sent, it was a speed bump request, the one thing I can do, or two things I can do, is one, we can pull up the speeds in the neighborhood. We do have that program, which gives us the speeds on a certain street. So we can give you the speed data pretty quickly. The second thing is we can look quickly and say, is it even feasible or feasible to do it, and give you those two things. So you get speeds and you get feasibility. And then I'm not sure if the police could give us, if there's accident or been complaints on the streets to go with that. But those might be the three quick things you could possibly get if you sent it to the staff first. So you'd have that during the discussion.
Okay.
And those would all go towards prioritization too, I think. Yeah. But I think just having a discussion about everything that comes in is a little
Okay.
because one thing I've learned being on the commission, the TAC for over 10 years is that all of these issues are more complex than I ever imagined. Many.
So Kim, you're imagining the chair, and I think this makes sense, but without having any discussion, you get a speed bump request, you send it to Guilford, and when we finally do discuss it, whenever it gets on an agenda, we already have some of the information we need in order to have a fruitful discussion. But it's the chair's call. I just want to figure out who makes the call. It's not going to be the commission because we're not going to talk about it. That's fine. But the chair would look at these requests, and some of them he just immediately forward on, or someone would forward on to the relevant department. So say a speeding issue. And so the chief, or Kathy herself gets this request about a speeding question on a certain street in Amherst. Then I assume they immediately, or over the next week or so, they're going to generate some data about that. And then when we have the discussion, we have some data to talk about it. So I just want to know who makes the call. And it sounds like it's the chair.
Yep.
Fine.
That's what I would suggest.
Okay.
Counselor McLeod?
McLeod.
Sorry.
Thank you, Kim. And I don't mind being called Sam, Mr. McLeod, or Sam is fine. Whatever the individual who's speaking to me wishes to refer to me as is fine. Sam, Counselor McLeod, whatever is good. My thoughts are that, it comes to the commission, and when I say to the commission, it goes to the chair. It's on the list, and there's apt to be information needed for certain requests. And an inquiry could simply be sent saying, we'd like information on this. So the next step is requested, but it still resides, it comes initially to when I say the commission, whoever the representative is of the commission that receives it. But it seems to me it should, and a standard protocol could be set up as we proceed. It may be for speed bumps or for whatever, we're going to ask for these informations. I don't know why it needs to be one or the other. I think the chair of the commission should retain control over any incoming in terms of the process, whether they want to be discussed or not. That's up to, the chair sets the agenda, hopefully according to priorities. But a simple email, this is a speeding issue, we'd like this information. Maybe it's just semantics that we're talking about here. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Mr. Steinberg?
Yeah, there's a lot of information that is behind all of these. I think that Ms. Tremblay has emphasized that already. Would She talked about what she learned at TAC, what I've learned over the years of my service in various capacities, from select board to council to TSO and now to this body. Um, there's a lot of complexity to most of the issues that we deal with. And the amount of information that people have at this point is varied by our work experience and our volunteer experience. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I think as we proceed, we will have a better understanding, all of us, about the complexity of those issues. And so that's one of the things that I've been continuously thinking about. Uh, an example is speed limits. Uh, I think there's two different questions with speed limits, at least two. I think that Chief Ting is probably going to give me a lot longer list. But one is how the state law and DOT regulations allow for municipalities to establish speed limits. And it's a complex issue. And really have to understand that. The second thing is, and I was reminded of this in a discussion with Superintendent Mooring last week, and that is when we're permitted to put signs up, um, is not only regulated, but is apparently being reviewed right now by DOT. I think some of us know a lot about the subject of the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and some of us may never have heard that term whatsoever. But I hope that within a fairly short period of time, that everybody's going to be familiar with the concept of both the state adaptation of the manual and the manual, which is from the Federal Highway Administration, that sets out a number of things about how you post and mark roads so that there's uniformity and clarity for users of the roadways. And but we have to be, in the end, very conscious of that. And so we are going to, I think that over time, we're going to end up adopting different processes, but we do need to move forward as quickly as possible to talk about things such as those that I've mentioned. So I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Bag?
Thank you. I think I'm okay with this approach, at least kind of for this initial period of time while we understand how many requests we might get and how it looks for us to learn about projects that kind of got submitted but are just in queue or in process of data gathering, that kind of thing. So I'm okay with this, but I do want to think about it from the homeowner's perspective. I want to make sure that if they are sent immediately to staff people, that staff's going to be providing information and not asking them for information. Because I think, if I'm a resident and I want to ask about a speed limit change on my street, I don't think it's fair for them to be burdened with figuring it all out and go gather information and come back to us. As long as they're being assisted to find information, I think that's helpful. I'm just worried about the resident who kind of gets a no and doesn't get enough information, and they might want to come to the commission to learn more or understand that they have this other avenue to have discussions. So I'm open to this idea. I just want to see how it plays out in the long run. I don't want residents to feel like they get completely moved away from the commission and never to be seen again. And I trust that Guilford's office can provide the data and information, but feasibility is kind of a broad term. Like if it's just determined it's just not feasible, like are we as a commission going to know why it wasn't feasible, what were the factors that gave someone just a no, like it's not even going to come to the commission. Just the feedback loop of information is kind of what I'm trying to follow as we get a little bit more into this.
So one thing we did discuss in the subcommittee, and I encourage people to check out, is the Northampton. They have, a process for dealing with issues like this, and they actually have. I found this really helpful, like tabs you can click on about all of the reasons why or why not one could have, for example, a stop sign installed. So getting to your like it already pre-explained a lot of like more common kind of requests, which I found really helpful because it goes towards, someone might say it's not feasible, but you can actually look on why you might not be able to install a particular thing or a speed limit change or whatever. I think that would be something really ideal for our committee to actually end up establishing, as we go through different types of requests, because I think that's super important.
Yeah, and I think that could be built understanding how many requests came in and went to questions, and if there was a resolution like not feasible. Like I think it would be helpful for us to measure this a little bit over time. Like if we're getting a lot of stop sign requests and they got submitted and then determined that they weren't feasible, I think as a group, we just want to lose track of our group understanding
right.
that all those inquiries are coming in and kind of getting shot down or whatever, because I think we want to be able to learn from that too. So that the feedback loop is where I guess I'm focused. But so that's helpful for
Yeah.
explaining that.
Yeah, they really did a great job on this if you ever want to kind of explore how they do it. And Counselor McLeod.
Thank you, Kim. Your suggestion, Kim, or
Tremblay.
Please correct me if I mislabel
Kim.
anyone. I'm not
Yeah,
intending to.
fine.
I think it's a great suggestion. Any FAQs that we can generate would certainly be extremely helpful for applicants. I also agree with Jeff's comment regarding concern for feedback. It seems to me that if inquiries come into the form that goes to the commission, the communication back to the individuals who have applied should run through the commission as well via whatever method that might be. Otherwise, we may have 5 different types of communications going out to the or multiple communications going to the applicants.
Yeah.
It just seems to make a lot more sense to have a central response, whatever that may be. Information is going to need to be solicited or known from other, whether it's the police department, DPW, planning, whoever. But the response, I think it should be central to the applicants. Apply on if this were not the town, they apply on a website. Hey, what's going on with this? The response should come from that website. In this case, it would be the commission. That's how I would envision any back and forth going.
And so one other thing, just because I'm not sure if I got to this as well, is that we would have a public facing list of the requests that would have, and again, this is mirrored after what Northampton has done, is where they are in the process and where each request is in a process, and if a resolution has been made, what that resolution is. Just and that is something we definitely can do and will do. Something like that. Grisha?
So I want to just sort of, I think, repeat what we've all been saying and just confirm that I'm understanding this correctly, that essentially, these requests are coming in, the chair is seeing them, and in certain cases might be reaching out to other departments to source information. But that's essentially the extent of the work that any other department would be doing before the commission discusses anything. And in fact, no department would ever be directly reaching out to the residents. All of that communication would come directly through our commission. And so once we discuss, we might reach out to those departments more for a more detailed plan. But at no point would anyone other than the committee or its representatives be reaching out to the residents or making a decision that's sort of public facing, or even not even public facing, just a decision at all about, where this is priority wise. We'll obviously be informed by what the people say, but or what the departments say, but is that sort of everyone else's understanding as well?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so if there's no, thank you for that discussion. I feel like that clarified, and Grisha just kind of restated the discussion. I appreciate that. Can we go, and so the final, oh, sorry. Sam, did you have?
Was there a conclusion to the points that were made? I don't know that I heard one.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I think the conclusion is that the chair, well, and actually didn't ask the chair what he thought about being the keeper of, kind of soliciting other departments for request, like how you felt about filtering the requests before they come up for an agenda, on an agenda item.
I think that it makes sense that I work with key staff and the future chairs, since I don't intend to be chair for life. As a matter of fact, I only intend to be chair for 1 year. That we make sure that there is a chair designated to have that role. And I think as we get to proceed in a pattern, it will work well. Some of it is going to vary depending upon decisions that are made about future chairs. And I only say that because the director of Department of Public Works is the chair of that committee and commission in Northampton, and therefore it has a very different role because, and I think that might happen here too, depending upon who we have at various points in time as chair.
Yep.
That's.
But at least starting as a first step. This is comfortable for you.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So you can discuss with Kathy, I guess, how exactly you want to hear. Do you want to hear every time a request comes in, or every week or something? But you can work that out with her. Okay, can we go on to the final item, the other item that I have? Actually, can I share instead? Am I able to share?
You should be able to share.
Okay, great, because I actually have.
Oh, you want to go back to the chart?
No. It's a little more complicated. So this is the chart that we have. But I have been unable to share the whole Excel sheet because it's very extensive. So this is the prioritization list. And we kind of decided that, at least for now, something like this would work really well. So it's scored, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And each one of these kind of subsections comes with a sub list of how many points or how high to score any particular issue, a much more specific list. And at the moment, I'm not able to share it with you because it's such a large item. So we'll have to figure out a way to share the whole thing. But the total criteria include, and I'm just going to go over those because I think it's important that everyone hears because what kind of thought went into this. And I must also state that this was created by the TAC many years ago as a way of scoring multimodal projects, so projects that involve street and sidewalks and bike paths and things like that. But I really like the way this is organized. And this was mainly produced by Eve Vogel. And she shared all the work that they did with me, and that's where this is located in her Google Doc. So the first important thing here is network connectivity. So how well does the proposed project, link neighborhoods to the downtown? Does it improve gaps in current transportation networks? Does it increase, walkability within the public and within the network? That's what network connectivity means. How well does it increase the improve the transportation network in town? And if it improves it a lot, then it gets more points than if it doesn't. And again, the degree of improvement, there's a very extensive list here of how what improvement kind of means more specifically. Does it prioritize, does that transportation prioritize land use, economic development, or other types of Amherst planning goals? And there's a whole list of those right here, which is also, there are a lot of documents on that the town has created on envisioning the future of Amherst in all these specific ways. Does it obviously, safety is super important. Does it improve safe and accessible pedestrian, bike, transit driving, in town? Does it, so here, for example, intersection crossing or mid-block crossing, which might be the kind of thing that that's on the agenda item today, like a crosswalk through between neighborhoods, for example. And finally, fairness and support in Amherst. So things like, has it been in the queue for a long time? Has this particular project been in the queue? Have neighborhoods rallied behind it? And is there strong support from residents or businesses in the neighborhood? And does it not have an impact? Does it not have a negative impact on vulnerable populations? And then, of course, final is timeliness, feasibility, cost effectiveness. So it could be that a street is currently getting improved, and at the time it makes sense to also put in a sidewalk, for example. The street is already being improved. It's the right time to install a sidewalk. That would be timeliness. Will that particular improvement last for a long time? For example. So those are the types of priorities that prioritization list that we could really get down in the nitty-gritty with. And the whole committee seemed to agree that this was a pretty comprehensive type of list. So we decided that this is the kind of prioritization list that we would be interested in using. And I know it's really complicated, and I know I encapsulated, I said a lot in a short amount of time, but there also has been a lot, like I said, each one of these items, are divided into smaller bits that could be, we could give a value to each one, for example. Yes, Mr. Bag.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I agree. This list is great. I think I didn't know this existed, and I think it's really helpful. Can you clarify? Sorry if this is a basic question, but can you clarify whether the discussion was that when a project gets proposed to us, we use this as a kind of scoring sheet, or like even like a resident project or a town project? I might have missed how
No, yeah,
you
right.
presented how we would use it.
The idea is using this. Okay, we have all these projects that we're interested in. How do we decide which one to choose? There's a set amount of money and time.
Okay. Right. So this is more about for some projects that are kind of already identified
Yes.
or advanced, more so than a resident who asked about a speed
Correct.
bump kind of thing. Okay. Yeah,
Although,
I mean,
although at some level, I'm sorry to cut you off.
that's okay.
At some level, I think we could also use it for that as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, quick question was whether you felt like the committee needed to go through a process to update this, or whether this could at least stand on its own currently as a resource for us. And the last part would be like some potential of posting this available on the website might be helpful for guidance for anybody to kind of look at how we would look at projects. So
That's
I
a
like
good
this a
idea.
lot. I think it's great. I didn't know it existed.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't know what our committee actually did. It's kind of sad. But anyway, yes. I don't know which of you were first.
George.
George.
So I envision this as something that we could use for just about anything, even our discussion today. Resident requests. We'll see how it plays out. But the other thought I had was I wouldn't put too much focus on the point system. I don't know if we want to take them away, but I think what I like about this is it identifies a series of broad categories, and within it a series of sub-questions. Some will be relevant to particular projects, some won't,
Yes.
but it gives us a way to sort of shape our discussion. But I don't imagine I would be sitting down with a pencil writing numbers down. I would be looking at, the kinds of questions and then overall, where things come out. But that's just me.
Yeah, I think this, like I said, I tried to preface this was meant for kind of really large projects and how to prioritize multimodal projects involving streets and sidewalks and bike lanes and,
But Kim,
more
don't you think with a project like things we're looking at today, and maybe it's just me, but I would think that some of the questions that are, criteria that are here would apply to something as specific as a crosswalk, or maybe that's
Yes.
maybe not.
I do agree. Like, for example, does you could think, how
Okay.
many people is this particular project going to serve?
Yeah. And how much support does it get? And how long has it been in the queue?
Yeah.
Some of these are questions we'd be asking of but you're also right. And I think Jeff is right that this is also something that could be very useful when you're trying to deal with some much larger projects that are much more complicated. And then maybe a point system might make more sense. I don't know.
Right.
But
I agree.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you. I chaired CPA for 3 years. We had forms like this for proposed and provided to the members of the committee for, and we had fewer projects that would come before us. There might be 10 or 15, 12 in a given CPA cycle with a fixed time frame for adjudication. And what our committee did at that time was to recognize that it could be a lot of detail for individuals to go through to necessarily add points to each in determining if there is a conflict between projects, which ones they wanted to support more. So I see this as a great listing of the nature of decision making or things to consider for individuals. Um, Personally, I always preferred and would want for the individual to arrive at their own conclusion if there's so I guess I'm wondering how is it what is the point total utilized for? I see this as a phenomenal listing for the purpose of issues that are going to come before us. Um, but is it, are we going to be faced with one project versus another? Or is it just the nature of things to consider? Um, that's my take on it. I have one other question, which is the cost, which it seems to me would be,
I think the
and
cost is down here.
yeah, I would envision the cost being a potential, um, you know, is it a limiting factor on the front end? That is to say, of greater magnitude than might be referenced here in this listing. If things, is funding available or not?
Yeah.
And separate from that, what is the available pool of funding that might, are we adjudicating between projects is what I'm getting at. And if that's the case, what's the total pie that gets sliced up? So those are my comments or thoughts as I looked at the listing. I found it to be really uh, informative in terms of have you considered this? Have you considered that? But
Yeah.
I struggle with point allocation as opposed to general, here's here's my outcome, for
I
lack of a
guess
better term.
so, to me, what are, so again, these were for this particular was for larger projects where we did have to prioritize because there isn't, in the next, road improvement season, there's only a certain amount of money. And so how do we help our public works director decide which projects get done? And like, to me, this list is very, giving things points, which I agree is not appropriate for every project, helps you to be more fair. If you really, these are, so to me, that's a lot of these ideas may apply to particular search situations, but the big projects, I think all of, taking into account all of these factors is really important. But yes, I agree. For smaller things, I I don't know. But I like the idea of trying to be fair.
Yeah, we had lots of projects of varying size, not massive roads, of course. I mean, there was a budget maybe of $1 million or so between all the varying, plus debt, we'd go higher. And we'd take a number of the committee members would use forms such as these to organize their thoughts, identify their priorities, and then ultimately landed on a scale of, we used a 1 to 5. Uh,
Mhm.
here's everything we factor in, we give it a 1 through 5 for the purposes of discussion. In
Yeah.
other words, the forum didn't mandate the outcome.
Mhm.
The the thought processes and the discussions were the final, but it was phenomenally helpful.
Mhm.
Those are my thoughts.
And sometimes, pots of money come up from the state that if you have a list like this, especially for major projects already kind of decided, then you can go to the project that fits the pot of money that's available, which may not be ours, the towns. It may be something that we can apply for through the state. Um, if we have projects already in mind and they're in the queue and we can identify them as being important.
Might there be a single fixed point in time where decisions are made such that there can be consideration of 2 or 3 different projects?
Yeah.
Other committees, there'd be a 1 month time frame where and that's something I think for the chair and I guess the committee as a whole, because my understanding is that we'll be receiving ongoing requests, and some are smaller, some are larger, and it's just a thought process. Do we how do we determine at what point in times decisions are made to allocate if we're seeking to compare one versus the
Yeah.
other?
That's a good point. Yeah, and I don't have an answer.
I'm brainstorming.
Yeah. Are there other comments? Because we have some other important items. This, again, I feel like this list is helpful, but doesn't necessarily have to, and certainly the point thing can be come or go. I think for larger projects, the idea of a point system is probably more applicable. But I like having a kind of these set goals that are listed here for looking at for projects. And I'm done, unless there's any other questions.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate the work of Ms. Tremblay and the entire subcommittee. It has really helped us tremendously. I need to call on Mr. Mooring to help with the next item on the agenda, which is where we need to continue with the discussion about the sidewalk on West Street at Mount Holyoke Drive, which was last meeting's discussion, and Superintendent Mooring has done some additional work, quite a bit of additional work, and so I thought his presentation and for the criteria that we were talking about, this is a safety issue and a multimodal issue very much, because there is a sidewalk only on one side of West Street, and we want to make sure that people that sidewalk safely and use it. That was the thing. If we could feasibly do that and recommend that. So, Mr. Superintendent Mooring.
Okay, so I'll share my screen here. So everyone can see this little drawing we came up with. So this is just a quick concept of what can be done. And so I will use my pointer a bit. So this is the existing sidewalk on the far left of the drawing. So we would have to take out some of the existing sidewalk, put in a concrete pad, put in the ADA tactile pavers, and then we can come across, put in another tactile pad, and then we need to decide as a committee, this is something we're going to run into a lot, is what do you do with the person when you get them across the street? Technically, you're supposed to drop them off in another accessible area, but there's not sidewalks everywhere else. So do you just kind of make the drop off into the road and acknowledge that's the best we can do for now, or do you try to do something else? Here we actually ran the sidewalk all the way down to a driveway, dropped them in a driveway. That kind of added to the cost and the work, because we have to there's a storm drain we have to install, and this person's behind the sidewalk here and run into the storm drain. But this is the concept. We can put together concepts like this pretty quick. It took about, it didn't take very long. We had a little gap in work, so Paul Death here was able to put this together quickly. So there's also a cost. You ready for the cost? About $95,000. And that's because we chose to run it chose to run it to the driveway. You could probably cut this in half if you run it to just drop the person off in the road after you get them across the street. So it's just kind of, this is the things that will come up as we do these. And then as a committee, you have to realize if we vote for either one of these, we're not truly meeting the ADA requirements. We're improving but someone in the neighborhood could file a complaint and say, well, you need to make it accessible some way. There's always a line you have to draw where you're stopping, and then you have to understand you're going to make some people mad, but you're going to make some people happy. So this is kind of the rough thing we can do pretty quickly. I would say that within a couple of weeks, if we get a request, we can put something like this together and then come up with like this one. This one's easy. I mean, we can't do it on this is the south side to the bottom of the drawing. We can't do it on the south side because there's a large street tree. We would have to take the street tree out. We don't want to take the street tree out. This is the best spot. So this one's pretty easy to fit in. Any questions?
And
Yeah.
you should, excuse me, you should ask Sam to mute.
Oh, maybe I can do that.
Can you mute
Should be
Sam?
able
Yeah,
to.
I was hoping someone could mute him.
I
Okay,
can
there we
do
go.
that. I did
Um,
it.
thank you. Thank you.
Nice
Man,
job.
I got
Nice
the
job.
power.
On the left side of the map, is there a sidewalk on the left side of West
Yes,
Street?
this is
Okay.
the multi-use path that runs along
Gotcha.
this side of the road. You can't see it very well in this drawing. Let's see. There's some pictures here.
Sorry, and I wasn't present at the last meeting, so I apologize.
This, whoops,
Right.
sorry.
Okay, so that's all on the
That's the existing sidewalk.
west side? The west
Yes.
side? Okay. And Guilford, can you go back to the sketch, which I think is great. I think if that's something that your team can produce relatively easy to kind of like vet some of these, it's great. So are you saying that is the minimum requirement to land on the yellow proposed landing on the east side, is that the minimum standard?
No, if we do say this is as far as we're going to go, we would have to put another curb ramp down to the street and
Okay.
pretend like we're crossing another crosswalk.
Right.
So there'd be a little more, but we could get rid of all this work here. That would be
Okay.
the minimum.
Okay. That's helpful for me to understand. I mean, I think that it's unfortunate, but it's not uncommon to see that minimum standard hit on the east side. I mean, that's happening in East Hampton and other places as well. But in general, I don't know what the discussion was from the last meeting. I do see some potential merit of trying to get people from Mount Holyoke Drive to that multi-use path. I think the harder question is how far down Mount Holyoke are you chasing this? So I appreciate the discussion so far. I'll stop because I wasn't at the last meeting.
Life.
So I think maybe this would be a good time to. I know we have a few members from Mount Holyoke here to hear what some of the perspective on this is, because I know there's not sidewalk for most of Mount Holyoke Drive, and I think that's not necessarily the biggest safety concern because it's a relatively narrow street. You know, it's very residential. The people who are turning into it sort of know that it's a residential neighborhood. The crossing on West Street really is a big concern because of the visibility and because of the speed. So if we're talking about how far down Mount Holyoke Drive we want to go, it may turn out that that's not even necessarily a priority for the people who have already requested it.
Mr. Tremblay.
Yeah, so my concern is installing just a crosswalk really make this a safer, make it safer to cross?
Mhm.
Because I think the concern was children and crossing the street. So just putting in a sidewalk doesn't a crosswalk doesn't slow traffic down. I mean, it should, but it doesn't, That's my concern.
Are we still waiting to be
Mr. Moore,
acknowledged?
do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I do. So the neighborhood brought up that the children in this neighborhood need to cross the street to go to Crocker Farm, and that's not actually true. If they stay in their neighborhood, there's actually a sidewalk that goes from the neighborhood to Crocker Farm. So children would only, I don't see, it wouldn't be a daily occurrence for children to have to cross this crosswalk to go to school. Is just all I wanted to say.
Chief Tank?
Sorry, just unmuting. Yeah, in regards to the crosswalk, I just wanted to respond to what Ms. Tremblay was saying in terms of, I mean, I would certainly recommend some signage to make that crosswalk a little bit more visible. So that would certainly slow down some traffic, I believe. Thank you.
Councilor Ryan?
Yeah, I think I'm echoing the concern of Kim, and it sounds like the chief as well. But I'm always worried that when you put in a crosswalk, it can potentially create a sense of false security. People just assume now there's a crosswalk and they can just go right out there and traffic is going to stop. But on a street like that, without signage, without some kind of, rapid flashing beacon or something, so that's the only worry I ever have with crosswalks. Is this creating even a worse scenario? Because now people just assume, well, of course, a crosswalk, I can march right across, and especially in certain locations. So that's a concern. I'm not saying we should go ahead. The other issue is how far we should extend this. And I don't know what to say about that, but maybe we should focus on this one at the moment, the issue of a crosswalk. And what is that going to make things safer or less?
Warren?
So I'm sorry, I keep forgetting that we have shorthand we talk about in the office, and other people don't have our same shorthand. So when we put a crosswalk in, at the minimum, what you're getting is this box here on the left of the drawing. You get the ADA ramps on both sides, you get crosswalk signs, and you get the painted crosswalk. So that's everything we put in. If you want to do an enhanced crosswalk, that's when you would get into adding lights and adding a rapid rectangular flashing beacon. Rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Yeah. Just so.
Yeah. Ms. Peg?
And I don't know if Grisha had the hand up before me. I'm sorry if I lost track of that. I guess again, apologize because I wasn't at the last meeting. I don't know if we're trying to render a decision tonight, but I would argue this forest for the trees conversation, which is there's an opportunity to get people across from Mount Holyoke to the multi-use path, which could get them pretty far into the community. And I think with signs and striping, I think it's a minimum that we could achieve that would help achieve pedestrian crossings. I think it's not perfect, but are we going to say that there's no crosswalk that's worth pursuing if we can't give it the gold standard all the time? So I'm inclined to entertain this discussion. I don't know if there's a trade-off that maybe didn't get discussed, which is trading the sidewalk extension up Mount Holyoke in exchange for rapid flashing beacons. I don't know what the cost of that is. I don't know if we want to set that standard that needs to be achieved just to get a crosswalk anywhere. But I do think with signage, and I'm assuming it's just basic yellow, pedestrian crossing signage. I think there's some value here to entertain this discussion to safely get people across. I think the goal is to allow pedestrians to cross the street more so than slowing traffic. I think those are two different kind of things that we would be achieving, like different goals. One is to achieve the opportunity for pedestrians to safely cross the street, and a separate one, I think, is entirely separate, which is to try to slow traffic. So forgive me if I'm off base with where we were trying to go tonight.
We're just trying to get the information that has been developed by DPW and get it to the commission so that we can identify further information that we may want to have. Ultimately, we do need to have some sort of announced public hearing in order to allow for public comment before we vote on a recommendation, but I think we're not there yet. This is not something that I would expect to happen in a single meeting, based upon my own experience, where we dealt with, TAC and TSO and what was then known as the DAAC, the Disability Access Advisory Committee, could take a fair period of time. I'm going to recognize Chief Ting, and I would appreciate Chief's thoughts about what is required for safety in this sort of situation where we have residents that do a lot of walking in the street and are trying to get to the other side to the multi-use path, and what the experience is from your perspective in the department about what kind of concerns might be for signage and level of compliance with the signage.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. So, couple concerns. First and foremost, I would want it. Obviously, there's a public demand for this crosswalk to be there. That's, if the public wants it, it's worth exploring because they're the ones that are utilizing the crosswalk or the need for a crosswalk in that roadway to get to a particular area. Especially children, because you have Crocker Farm right there. So certainly one of my biggest concerns when I talked about signage, I was truly talking about flashing beacons, not just your ordinary signage. I would want something a little bit more enhanced, simply because this particular roadway is a pretty fast-moving roadway. It's not like driving through the center of town where you have an expectation of a lot of pedestrians. This is a pretty quick straightaway, and people might not necessarily expect pedestrians to be coming out. And on top of that, as Guilford mentioned, or somebody else had mentioned, when pedestrians are crossing, a lot of times they don't pay attention. So you put those two together, and my fear is that you're creating, without proper signage and without some kind of flashing beacon, you're kind of creating the situation similar to 116 out in Sunderland, where you have a high prevalence of car versus pedestrian crashes, and that's something I don't want to see here. So if we are going to do something, or if the town decides to put a crosswalk in, I would want some serious type of safeguards there in terms of notification to let cars know that this is coming up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I might want to note on that in my younger years, when I was a member of the select board and we actually had a select board, one of the things that came up was what to do about crossings in the area of the Cushman Common, and the decision was made to install RFPs at a crosswalk that's at that curve in Pine Street to Bridge Street that goes across from the sidewalk that runs along Pine Street to Cushman Common. And I don't know if this is a voting for or against the sign, but in my time, those signs have been taken out twice by vehicles in some sort of accident situation where they've literally wiped out the signs themselves. I guess Mr. Leffler?
So I want to clarify something that was said earlier. The biggest concern is actually not so much Crocker Farm School, because as Guilford mentioned, there is a path in the back. It's more that if you go, so in order to get, there's that little sort of towns, like where the Rotary is, there's the gas station, there's a few restaurants, there's a hair salon, there's a sort of little commercial center. And the only way to get to that is to cross the street. There's no sidewalk between this area and that area. And a few residents had mentioned that, they want to give their kids more independence, to be able to go to those places, make their own purchases, but they have to send their kids across the street. Also directly across the street from here is the bus stop heading south. So that's directly across the street, right on the other end of this crosswalk. The To go to the other direction, so sort of where Crocker Farm is, that's so there's no sidewalk on the side of the road next to Mount Holyoke Drive. So if you want to get from there to either to that bus stop, which is I think the sort of the other big thing that's there. Again, you can walk on the side of the road. Some people are comfortable doing that. Some people are not. Personally, I live in this neighborhood. I'll do it in the summertime. I won't do it in the winter when it's dark. The shoulder is narrowed. And so the path to Crocker Farm is pretty deep into the neighborhood. So if you're trying to get to Crocker Farm, it makes a lot of sense. If you're trying, for example, to get to the bus stop, it's essentially 3-minute walk from this intersection here to that bus stop. If you have to go deep into the neighborhood and then sort of cut through Crocker Farm, go back down, it could be as much as 10 minutes. And also, I believe that I don't know for sure that this is true. I believe we are not supposed to be using that path during school hours. The other thing I'll note is that even just trying to sort of get into the traffic, either to cross the street or even to ride out on your bike, the cars do not stop. They don't have any sort of there's nothing signaling to them that this is a place where they should even think about stopping. Even there's other places without crosswalks where sort of the a person attempting to cross is a little bit more visible. There's really no indication. So it often takes, over a minute to even get out into the road. So I do think some sort of, indication that this is a place where people are attempting to cross will make a big difference in sort of the behavior of the cars, or at least that's my hope. And I believe that's all of my thought. I do think this could be a good place for a rapid flashing beacon, and it would be my personal vote to sacrifice the length of this sidewalk to do that. But again, that's something that we can hear more input on and discuss later on.
Councilor McLeod.
Thank you. I share some of Grisha's comments regarding the path. I'm uncertain if that's a town path or just an informal path that folks use. Friends of my son years ago when they went to Crocker Farm would go over there, but it is school property. When my kids were growing up, I would always have them hold my hands when they're in a parking lot. And I wouldn't have them walking on the side of this street just out of maybe over concern. But if I were a parent or, even elderly or even others, it seems to me there's not a simple exit from this series of, streets and houses to the sidewalk. All things being equal, it seems to me to be a very good thing. The primary, the two factors that come into play, and really the one that's most significant for me is what Chief Ting was discussing, which is the safety of the issue. Are we ensuring that it's in fact going to be a safer and not a hazard? That to me is primary. And I'm ignorant at present in terms of all the safety issues regarding crosswalks and traffic. I defer to those with much more experience than myself. But to me, safety is primary, and I understand the motivation for it, for the neighborhood. It seems to make sense if it could be done safely, underscore. And the money aspect is a separate discussion for me. Thank you.
Councilor Ryan.
I'm agreeing, I think, with two other, with Grisha and also with Jeff in the thought that, maybe a compromise would work here. I think a rapid flashing beacon, some kind of sign that makes it very clear that this is a place where pedestrians cross, more than just the usual pedestrian crossing sign, is absolutely essential. And I would never recommend a crosswalk here, hearing and listening to what I'm hearing today without saying that would be a necessity. And I would say a trade-off then, just not doing the extension, but making sure that you have the beacon, would be my preference, at least at the moment, if we recommend this at all.
Superintendent Moore?
So I would just want to say that, as the committee, our goal is to say, do we think this is a good project? Which I hear everyone saying, yes, we do. And then I also hear everyone saying that you would want this to be a enhanced, what we call an enhanced crosswalk, which would have the rapid flash and beacons. So that's really what I hear everybody saying. And then if we have like 3 or 4 more requests like this, then we'd have to like put them in order. There is no funding available right now to install this. So it would have to come up next construction season.
Mr. Bagg?
Just a quick follow-up. I think this goes to Guilford, but would it generally be feasible to talk about rapid flashing beacons in this location? I think that was something I couldn't get clarity on from you, but I think understanding if it was generally feasible or potentially feasible, that might allow us to kind of nudge it forward and then talk about what you talked about, which is like position this potentially in next construction season or something like that where there's funding.
Oh, sorry. We always try to go the minimalist approach first, and then as people say, well, we need to address this or this or this, then we look at what could be addressing those things. So yes, you can put rapid flashing beacons here. If everyone likes to talk costs, so I'll just throw it out there. It's $24,000 to $25,000 for beacons right now. Next year they may go up, but
Is that each? Is that each for, or is that for a set?
That's a set. You only use them in a set. So it's
Gotcha.
24,000 for 25. That's 24 or 25 for a set.
Okay. Thanks. That's helpful to clarify.
Councilor McLeod, and then as I'm looking at the clock, and there's 2 things we have to do yet.
Thank you. I appreciate what Guilford referenced in terms of if there are other requests for crosswalks, they might need to be prioritized. I'm aware of 2 emails related to crosswalks or requests that have come, so I can envision that being an issue down the road. But again, underscoring to me the safety of the outcome. That is to say, whatever if something occurs, if not maximizing, at least ensuring safety is, I consider it to be crucial. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that we need to conclude the discussion for today, and I'm not cutting off comments, but I want to make sure that if people have any last thoughts. I would like to make sure that we somehow come to grips with the cost question, and I think that there's a strong feeling that's been expressed today about needing to make it an enhanced crosswalk. Second thing that was mentioned by the superintendent earlier was that the cost could be reduced by reducing the length of the sidewalk on the other side. At some point, people would have to move into the street and walk in the street. And the question is, how far down should we have a sidewalk on the Mount Holyoke Drive side if we were to do this before people would have to move into the street? And, I think that there's cost information if you look at what has already been provided. But by the DPW as far as what we might be able to save by reducing the length of the sidewalk before people come into the street. So we need to get that information together, and at the next, I guess the other question is, at what point are we ready to decide whether or not to go to the next step, which I think, and I'm going to call on Councilor Ryan to help me with this, but I think that we are required on this one to make sure that there's a public hearing in the process. And if so, we need to make a decision to do that. Councilor Ryan?
Exactly my thought, Andy. The next step at some point soon, I think, would be to have some kind of public meeting, because I would very much like to hear from the residents. We know that we got a large number of signatures, so there's clearly a lot of interest, and it'd be interesting to hear what their thoughts are on a sidewalk extension. I think most of them are very used to walking that stretch, and they're in the street, and it's a residential area. But that's just my supposition. I could be totally wrong. So I'd very much like to hear their thoughts on that. And on the other idea of, of the crosswalk in general. So I think that would be a next step. I don't know about the timing, maybe the next month or so. But the other question is a more general one, and maybe we'll leave it for another meeting. But I wonder to what degree we should, we want to know what the costs are, but I'm not sure that we want to spend very much time arguing that. We basically look at a project and decide whether we think it's worthy from a whole series of criteria, and then it goes with our recommendation, subject to funding. And that's an issue for Guilford and for Paul, and potentially for the council, maybe in its broad financial planning. But it's not really, I think, an issue for us. And maybe I'm in the minority here, but I'm not sure. Ways to shrink the cost, that's perfectly reasonable. But overall discussing, well, gee, this is going to cost X amount of dollars. Should we recommend it? I don't know. Maybe that's for another discussion, but I wonder if that's really something we really want to spend a lot of time on, because we really don't make that call.
No, ultimately, we are going to be making a report, and I think we're required to make a recommendation if to go with our report.
Right.
And we're required to have a public meeting first. It then does have to go. It's always subject to funding, and
right.
Funding is always a decision of the town manager, because funds are appropriated for roads, but the decision on how the funds are to be used are delegated to the town manager. And it probably would require council action, because the crosswalk probably constitutes road redesign as specified in the policy. Chief Ting?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point. I just want to reiterate in support of what Councilor Ryan was saying. I totally agree. Because all of these projects that come in, they're all going to cost money, and they're all going to be expensive. So I don't think that it should be our purview in terms of the cost. It should be our purview in terms of the safety and if there's a necessity for it. And again, just reiterating that point that, that's up to the town manager and the town council to decide the funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trying to decide whether we would need to have a vote to organize a public hearing. I'm not saying it would happen at the next meeting, but Councilor Ryan, do you have any thoughts?
I don't think we need to vote on that. I don't know what the others think, but I would consider it to be standard procedure. One of the purposes of this body is to give people a chance to speak their minds and to be heard. And if we just go ahead and make a decision, and while we have heard from a number of people, and we've got a long list of names, I think that in these kinds of cases, we really do want to hear from the residents. So I don't think we need to vote. I think it would be standard operating procedure, but that's just me.
Yeah, actually, it's a question of what the policy requires too. And there is a fairly broad requirement about for a lot of projects requiring public hearing, which is going to come up in the next one, because I know we need it for major parking changes. But Ms. Tremblay?
Yeah. So then that means that all of the requests, all of the items that you chose to bring to us all get a public hearing. Do all requests get I mean, seems to be where all of this is going, but it seems like it's at our level, we can't do that for every request, can we? I mean, it's a lot of time.
I would say the answer to that is no. And well, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it today, but if you look at town council policy on public ways, it does have a requirement in certain areas where we have to have a public hearing, and I think in each circumstance, we have to look back at the policy, see what the policy specifies in that particular situation. Certainly, when we get to some of the traffic calming things that are talked about, like speed humps, it's not required. But if it's a question of major road redesigns or major parking changes, I believe. But I would even that I would have to go back every time and look at the policy to be sure. Superintendent Mooring?
Just quickly, maybe how we wrap up today is we formally say, yes, we agree with this needs to move on, and that's all we say today, and then we move it on to the next step.
Okay, Councilman Cloud?
I believe there was another hand up before mine. Oh, it's down now. Okay. The only question that I have regarding, next steps is we have internally been discussing possibilities of different approaches, and it seemed to me that a higher safety level with the signage and other items are being considered, although they're not currently in, what we have before us. I'm thinking that might make sense as a next step, and if it could be combined with hearing or whatever, that's fine from my perspective. But I think we, as a committee, don't yet have those details on what safety measures might be additional to what we have here. And longer term, aside from this one in front of us, I believe Kim was alluding to the need to consider multiple projects as we go forward against each other as we go forward. But anyway, that's all. I'm in favor of going forward, and the question is about additional information for safety that we talked about. Thank you.
Councilor Ryan?
I think, Andy, you were remembering it, and I just took a look at the policy as it's written, and what's phrased as a public meeting is required for any major roadway or sidewalk redesign. But under the first item of permanent changes, which would include what we're talking about tonight, it doesn't have that specification. So in theory, we could answer Kim's concern, which is a very real concern, so we'd be having public meetings all the time. The actual policy, as I understand it, and I'm looking at it right now, does not require a public hearing or meeting, excuse me, for this particular item, but it would require it for what are called major roadway or sidewalk redesigns. So it seems discretionary. We could decide we want to do it. We could decide we don't want to do it. We could make it standard operating procedure. But if we did, Kim's concern is real, which is we've been having these meetings or hearings a lot. So take Kendrick Park, for instance. Right, we have a whole bunch that are coming along. Do we gonna have a public hearing for all of them? Public meeting? Or do we just put it on an agenda and make sure the public is notified in advance and people can come and we can have it back and forth, but we're not gonna have a special meeting for it?
Yes, Mr. Mag?
I think Krisha's hand was up first.
Well, I just have essentially a question is what counts as a public meeting? Is this not a public meeting? Because I think in this case, at the very least, I think we need to have one more opportunity for residents to state, sort of to give feedback on any proposed plan. But does that not count as a public meeting?
That is a public meeting. It would have to be noticed that we are just having a discussion and seeking input, and but it just gets posted as a public meeting to enable members of the public to express their opinion about what is being considered prior to taking a vote. Mr. Pag?
Yeah, so I'm a big process person, so this is interesting. I know we're belaboring it at this point, but I agree with Krisha that I think I think we should have the meeting in August, have this as a specific agenda item. My question is like whether the residents of Mount Holyoke Drive knew we were going to be discussing this tonight and were invited, since there's no one here. I do think as our process unfolds, I do think we did a little vetting. We are not hearing from them at all as to what they think of our discussion. So I do think it's kind of important to have a public meeting where there's the opportunity. I do want to draw some kind of bright line between this and a public hearing. You know, public hearing has a specific connotation. I don't know exactly what the rules would be, but that would be noticed in the Gazette. That would be legal advertisement. I think we need to know where there's a public hearing threshold. Because, you know, our committee, I would say, is not quite set up to hold a bunch of public hearings if they have formal requirements attached to them. And then the last thing is I would argue that this is not a major roadway redesign, in my opinion, but I don't know if we have that fleshed out somewhere else, but
Yeah.
that's all.
We're not going to be able to resolve it today, but to answer one of your questions that I think is a very important one, since you're in the planning department and you have lots of public hearings with boards and committees that are connected to the work of the planning department, there is a real distinction, and I think you very much have hit upon it, because some of it is a matter of legal requirement. The reason that we were advised by town council, town attorney, to have the council change its policy to use the word public meeting was because we didn't want to incur some of the legal obligations that go with using the word public hearing. And that's really, a lot of that is notice kinds of things. The purpose is that we would be able to hear from the public, engage the public in being able to provide their perspective, but in a somewhat less formal setting than you experience in some of your work in planning. I hope that makes sense. So, Councilor Ryan, let's.
So yeah, that was why public meeting is the word used in the official policy. So we're not talking about public hearings at all in the sense that Jeff has in mind. And the language in the policy is a public meeting. And that could, as Grisha pointed out, that could very well be our next August meeting, where we hopefully reach out to the residents and say, this is going to be on the agenda, and we very much like to hear from you. That's a public meeting, and we hope we'll hear from them. It's not a public hearing. So there is a public hearing is mentioned in the formal policy, but it's a very technical thing, and it only says that if we're ever required by state law to hold a public hearing, in the sense that Jeff has in mind, then we have to do blah, 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 blah. But for all the stuff that we're talking about, it's a public meeting. That's it.
Okay. I want to move on to the last two items, and one is minutes, so that we have, which will hopefully be fairly quick, and the other one I can make brief with Mr. Superintendent Mooring's help, and that is that we received a public request having to do with the parking issue. And the parking issue has to do with the spaces that have been created near the Kendrick Park playground on North Pleasant Street. And there was supposed to be some sharing between people who want to use parking for that purpose and people who are residents and can use resident stickers. And the observation that was being made was that a lot of students who are the prime users of permits for that area will leave their cars there all day long which is allowed because it's permitted. They have parking permits, and then there are no spaces available, even though there is a parking box to pay for parking, as there are in the other areas where there are multiple places. Plus, there's the Park Mobile application that people can use from their cell phones, the app. So that is the observation that was made by one resident, and the suggestion that some spaces, and I think that was actually the original intention when this was talked about initially, that there be some spaces that are not for use of people with parking permits, but they are only to be used for hourly parking purposes for people who want to use it for whatever reason, presumably use of the park. Mr. Mooring, do you have you and I talked about that, and you said you had also shared the observation about this that we heard from the resident.
Yes, we've heard the same thing, that all the parking spaces during the school year are filled with residents parking there. I think the Kendrick Place building and the One East Pleasant Street building, they are eligible for parking permits in the downtown. I think most of these spaces are filled with people from those two apartments or two buildings. I think it's actually a valid concern, and then we might want to make an adjustment to say that you need to, we might want to choose to say that the parking spaces in front by the park, there's about 8 or 9 of them here, that they're just, that during the day you have to pay for parking instead.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yeah, as someone who literally bikes by here twice a day, I count that off. It's very obvious that there are student residents who are parking there, and there literally are no spots for anyone else. And you can just see right now it's empty. Like, when school is not in session, this is absolutely true.
Yes, and I heard you've
So I was just going to ask, we also saw a proposal to redesign this park, which would, as I recall, remove 2 parking spaces. Is that correct?
Yes, that's at this end down here.
Okay, so that would not affect actually what these parking spots that we're discussing now? Or I mean, rather, it would only increase demand, basically, is what we're saying.
Well, when we do the work at the south end of the park, we'll actually add 2 spaces, but all you're adding is 2 spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Ryan?
So I agree with what I'm hearing. I agree with the resident concern. I think the only question I have is, um, going forward, maybe not deciding tonight, but fairly soon, hopefully, what would be a reasonable number? Would you just say the whole area needs to be, you can't use a resident sticker Monday through during the day hours? Would you suggest 10 spaces, 9 spaces? What would be a reasonable proposal to address what seems like a real issue that residents wanting to use this for their kids or whatever just can't use it because it's taken up by people who have stickers. So how many?
Yeah, no, that is part of the discussion that we'd have to have next, but in matter of time, in recognizing what the clock is, I wanted to just at least introduce this topic so that all of you would understand what it is that was being brought to us. Councilor McLeod?
Thank you. Yeah, I see the issue here as described, and would have similar thoughts to the resident. A question arises for me. How many parking spaces are there downtown that are permitted for parking all day as opposed to hourly metered? Are there many other spots such as these downtown?
Uh, no, there's only two areas in town where we have a hybrid system where you can either have a permit or pay for parking. Um, the rest of the town is definitely delineated. It's paid parking or it is permit parking.
Uh, okay. And the majority, it seems to me, are paid parking from what I've seen. Uh, maybe,
I would.
maybe I'm unaware.
It's pretty close to 50-50.
Is there any delineation of that? I'm just thinking in terms of the impact on the folks who are parking there where they might go. Uh, I'm not saying it overrides the concern because, this is a new sidewalk adjacent to a downtown primary park that we're seeking to encourage access to. But does anyone know where that information might exist other
So
than walking?
So actually, we were just talking about how we decide when to send something to the staff and have them come back with information. This sounds like a good one for us to say we need more information and maybe a draft uh, parking change and to send it to the staff and we can come up with that information and present it at either August or September meeting.
Yeah.
I think
Thank you.
that would be helpful. I don't know if the chief has heard anything within the department complaints along this line, but if so, he can let us know. Um, Mr. Bag?
Yeah, just quick. I think this is a fine discussion. I think it's important to kind of flesh out this specific question. I just want to be mindful for the committee that this is likely to raise a lot of different questions, but I think if we need to kind of keep it neat and tidy so that we can address this specific concern while we might hear others. I think if we're keeping it neat and tidy on this focused area, I think that's ideal. I think it's not going to be too long until we're talking about the entire municipal parking district and all these different things. And I think we just got to be mindful of how there are other potential questions and issues, but we're going to focus on this side of the street for this purpose. And I think that's going to keep us focused. But I think we're going to hear probably a lot of other questions and concerns that arise once we get into this.
And that's what you're going to have at a public meeting. Ms. Tremblay?
Yes, and just to follow up on that exact sentiment, McClellan Street, which is where you can access this from the neighborhoods, there is a significant parking problem on that street, and which is all permitted parking. And so, taking away these spots means that neighborhood will become even more inundated with cars, which has a significant impact on the neighborhood because it does shrink a large portion of that road from a two-way street down to a one-way street. And it becomes very complicated. So, all actions have a reaction, just to remember this.
So I think that we need to come back to this discussion. Mr. Morgan suggested that the staff give some thought to the question of the number of spaces that might be appropriate, and then report at a subsequent meeting, at which point I think that we actually would be required to organize a public meeting on this. It's a major parking change. It's fairly well defined within the town council policy that a public meeting would be required. That we would be required, if we are going to suggest a change, to have a public meeting to report on the public meeting and our recommendation to the council, and then it's up to the council to make the decision ultimately as to whether to make that change. Anything else on the topic today? If not, there were minutes that were posted for the April meeting. They were included in the packet. There's any suggested changes to the minutes as they were submitted? I know that they've been reviewed by me and they've been reviewed by the town manager.
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
There's been a motion made by Mr. McLeod and seconded by Councilor Ryan to approve. Why don't we just go through with that and then take a motion to adjourn, because I think we're going to have to skip the other topic, which is discussion about traffic calming options, because we just don't have time. So the motion on the floor is approval of the minutes, and I'll just go in alphabetical order. Mr. Bagg?
Yes.
Mr. Lafer?
Yes.
Councilor McLeod?
Aye.
Superintendent Mooring?
Yes.
For the record, Mr. Rodewald is absent. Councilor Ryan?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Chief Ting?
Yes.
And Ms. Tremblay?
Yes.
Okay, so it's unanimous, one member absent. Is there anything else that people feel that they need to raise about the future meetings, or do we just leave it that we ask is that Catherine send out a poll as soon as possible so that we can find a date? I think that August is going to be difficult because it is a heavy vacation month. Councilor Ryan?
Not so much about the date, but just about what you think a future meeting in August will have on its agenda. For instance, the portal is something that we have been hoping for some time would be up. But I think more importantly, or as importantly, what you see as possible future agenda items would be, I'd like to hear if that's something you can say anything about.
If we can, I think it would be, we would want to try and do the public meeting. I have to keep using the right word. Public meeting for regarding the crosswalk, if the additional information can be made available, and to see if there's a further report on the issue that's just presented to us. The question of traffic calming, I think that we really as a group need to have some conversation about the general subject of traffic calming, and see if there are criteria that can be made available for issues that people identify as frequent requests we had earlier in the day comment about speed humps, and to be able to start as a group, begin to discuss what are the costs, what are the benefits, what are the disadvantages, what is utility for traffic calming of speed humps, so that we can understand that I'm sure that there are other issues that come up when you read comments from residents. It's usually about safety of streets and speed, and is a major issue in all respects. And I'm sure that the police department hears that on a regular basis. And so I think we need to understand that, and which gets back into then some of the other questions that I talked about earlier. So we've been moving on that direction, and whether we try and identify at least one more request that we can start discussing. But I think that there are other things that
Do you think Kendrick Park will be coming back in August?
I think Kendrick Park can come back, and I would like to actually move that as quickly as possible so that we can hear from members of the public, both users of the spaces for regular parking with permits, but also from people who, if we can get notice out, are users of the playground and feel that the lack of the spaces is an issue that needs to be addressed. Councilor McLeod?
Thank you. Future topics. At some point, it seems to me that the inquiries from the Flat Hills Road and the Station Road crews regarding lining, striping, and things is a topic for discussion, regardless of what the outcome might be. My understanding is that portions of the roads or at least Station is going to be repaved at some point. So I don't know if there's a timeliness issue there or not, but at some point, those two items in the queue of areas, there was significant resident emails that came at least to me when it came through the council. And so that's all.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ryan?
And just one last, from what I'm hearing tonight, I just want to confirm there is no work, at least for now, for the process subcommittee. People want to see how this is going to play out. Kim has made a presentation, sort of giving us the lay of the land. And so for the moment, there's no need for that subcommittee to continue meeting. And we're going to test this process out and see how it goes. That's my understanding. Is that everybody else's understanding?
Yes.
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 Good. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, it's been, I guess it was Councilor McLeod and Mr. Tremblay who made the motion, seconded.
Yep.
And so motion has been on the floor. We're going to go through the same order. This is a non-debatable motion. Mr. Bagg?
Yes.
Mr. Laver?
Yes.
Councilor McLeod?
Aye.
Superintendent Boring?
Yes.
Councilor Ryan?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Chief Ting?
Yes.
And Mr. Tremblay?
Yeah.
Okay, it's unanimous, one member absent, and thank you. This has, I think, been a very good meeting, and I hope that all of the rest of you agree, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night.